Thank you, Chamber of Tax Consultants, for this opportunity. Also, everyone who has joined, thank you so much. I can completely understand the lockdowns, the Saturdays, the weather that we see. It takes a lot of efforts to, at 11 o'clock come here and to learn Excel. So what's the big deal about Excel? Why is everyone talking about Excel? Why do we need to learn Excel? Uh, to all the students who are into their articleships or preparing for their finals, at some point of time someone definitely might have told you that you need to learn Excel. Why so much? And to answer this, I'm not going to give you all those statistics that so and so people, there are so and so Excel users, so and so number of organizations that run Excel. No, nothing like that. Quickly, in just a few minutes, I'll tell you something that I have experienced, one of my personal stories. So my father, who is a chartered accountant, practicing chartered accountant himself, he has been in practice since roughly 27, 28 years now. And so before I started my articleship, I used to go to his firm to do a couple of tally entries here and there. Then 3 years of articleship. And then again, I worked in his office for like 3 to 6 months. With all this experience of working in CA firms, there's one thing I was very sure about, that I'm not interested in this work. Like I was not enjoying filing returns. I was not enjoying audit. I was not doing anything. I was not enjoying any of the works that CA firms do. But the only thing that interested me in the entire journey was Excel. So I started learning more about Excel, YouTube videos, books. And yes, when I say books, I used to read the proper books, like things like these ones. So I used to read books on Excel and all the stuff, and that developed my interest into data analytics, and I wanted to join the data analytics industry. One thing about this industry is they generally hire only engineers and MBAs. They barely are receptive to chartered accountants, because somehow there is an image of our community being the non-technical ones. I'll not get into the debate if that's true or not, but that's the image that we as a industry, we as a community hold. But just improving my skills on this one tool, Excel. And still today, I cannot say that I'm a master or some Excel wizard or something. I'm on my way to learn. But just improving my skills on this tool landed me a job that I always wanted to do, a job of a data analyst. Today, after 2 years of being in the analytics industry, now I am working as a business intelligence developer. That's on Power BI. Power BI is again a tool by Microsoft. So that's it. And things that changed for me, like learning Excel, mastering this skill, everything, that led me to recently launch my own brand, that is Mind Your Excel. We are a brand that creates content on Excel. This brand is completely for the community. The videos, the courses, articles, everything is available free on my website or on the YouTube channel. There are some tips on the Instagram. I'm active on all the social media with Mind Your Excel. So this is something that I recently started, and that is my journey towards giving back and making people efficient with Excel. I really mean this by my heart, that I want people to get efficient with Excel and you know save time from their work and do things that add value to your lives. So what you see on the screen is something that Mind Your Excel does, and that has been my journey with Excel, and that is how I'm planning to go ahead with Excel. So without wasting much time, I'll quickly jump about today's session. Today's session is about Excel basics. So a lot of things that I might say today, if you are someone who has worked on your articleship and everything, you might feel that you know this stuff, but I would still recommend you that you hang on and go throughout the video, because there might be some things that you might not know, you might not have worked on. And secondly, today's session will form part for the tomorrow session, that's advanced Excel, where I'm going to talk about much about how CAs can use data analytics and Excel in their profiles. So to all the students out there, to all the fresh chartered accountants, to anyone who's going to enter the industry, and anyone is planning to go to a CA firm, believe me when I say this. And once you get qualified and enter the industry, you might connect to this more. But believe me when I say this one tool, like mastering this one tool, can completely flip your careers. I'm not using the word change or grow, I'm using the word flip. They can flip your careers. That's how powerful Excel is. So let's begin. So the first topic that I always cover in my Excel courses are the 3 thumb rules that I have made of working on Excel. Uh, I generally call them the 3 thumb rules that you should keep in mind while working on Excel. Once you do this, this is going to change the way you work on Excel, reduce a lot of efforts and reduce a lot of errors that you face. So I'll begin. Just a confirmation, is my screen visible?
Yes, part screen is visible.
All right. The first thumb rule that I say is, which you might find very logical, very intuitive, and you might feel, okay, yeah, like I know about this, but still you sometimes misusing them when you are preparing your reports. And the first thumb rule of Excel is always try deriving a data or an information rather than manually entering it. By deriving, I mean derive it using a formula, a function, or by linking it to other cells rather than manually entering it. So this is a very simple example where I have my invoice date, I have my credit period, I have my weekly purchases, and then at the end of the month, I need to make a total summary. So how do I begin preparing this report? The first part is always try bifurcating your Excel file into the stuff that can be derived or calculated or can be linked to cells, and something that surely needs to be manually entered. For example, the date, invoice date has to be manually entered, credit period manually entered, the liters and the rate manually entered, everything else can be derived. So I have highlighted the things that can be manually entered and left everything else. So let's see, this is a very simple example. All I wanted to prove here is just try linking everything in your worksheets and calculating it, and avoid as much manual inputs as possible. So let's see how a summary table can be calculated. My total amount will be nothing but my sum of all the amounts. The due date will again be nothing but my date plus my credit period. So I again get my due date. The days remaining will be nothing but today's date minus the due date minus today's date. So again, as I said, today's date. This is something that needs to be you can manually enter the date, but I would recommend using the today function, because this makes sure that when I open this sheet on the next day, everything in this calculation is automatically updated. So I'll do this. I entered the function wrong. It will be today minus the due date. But you see a strange result there. 2nd January 1900. What is that? So that brings me to the second thumb rule of Excel, data type awareness. Briefly, all the data types in Excel, I mean all these data types that we see here, they can be divided into 2 parts. Labels and values. Labels has only one data type, that is the text. And how do I identify if a certain data type is text? Whenever I enter a label data type, that's a text data type, it will by default align to the left of the cell. So let's say this is my cell. If I type Parth here, you see it is by default aligned to the left. Any text that I enter, it will be by default aligned to the left. So that is all about a text data type. There's nothing more to understand. The more detailed part of data type is the value data type. Value data type has all the other data types that you see. That is your whole numbers, the decimal numbers, your date, your percentage, your currency, your time, everything. But what you need to understand here is all the data types that you see, the whole number, decimal number, date, time, currency, percentage, they are nothing but raw numbers represented in a certain way. Let's see in detail what I mean. When I type 1 year and I convert this into, let's say, a date, I get the answer 1st January 1900. Similarly, when I convert 2 into a date, I'll see 2nd January 1900. So Excel by default considers every date as a whole number starting from 1st January 1900. So now you know that, sometimes when I type a date like this, and you might have noticed that sometimes instead of the date, you see something like this number, and people get all confused and seeing what's wrong. So now we know this number is nothing but the number of days that have passed since 1st January 1900 and the date that you previously entered. So now again we know the the 2nd January 1900 we see here is nothing but a number that is been represented as wrongly as a date, and that is because you added a number to a date, that is you subtracted two dates over here, and it took a by default the data type of a date. So when I change it to number and remove my decimals here, I get 2. So all the data types in Excel that you see, a whole number, decimal number, percentage, currency, date, type, accounting, all of these are raw numbers just represented in a certain way. For example, when I write 0.25 here and convert this into a percentage, it will multiply the number by 100 and show me. But at the end, how it is stored inside Excel is just a raw number, that's 0.25. So that is something about data type. You data type awareness will reduce almost 90% of the errors that you face in making your reports. So let's go ahead with the amount, and I multiply here and get my amount. I'll copy this and paste it here. So this is, if I notice this, the formula that I had in E7 of my cell was C7 multiplied by D7. But when I copied it below, the formula is not the same. It's C8 multiplied by D8 and so on, C10 multiplied by D10. So that is the third thumb rule of Excel, relative referencing. By default, all the cell references that you use in Excel are relative referencing. That is, their position keep changing. The references keep changing based on its relative position when you copy or drag them. So right now what we did was copied them. The other way to bring the formulas down was to simply drag them. Again, if you see, there's a relative reference C9 to D9. So as in when my cell changed from E7 to E8, my formulas also changed from C8 to D8 and so on. So that is the third thumb rule of Excel, relative referencing. By default, all the references that you see are relative. For example, let's say I have 5 written here, or let's say I have H8 written here. Now when I drag it right, you see my formula will be I8, it will be J8, it will be K8. Even though I copied or dragged the same formula, it changed relatively based on the position of the cell. So these are the 3 thumb rules that I briefly discussed. One is always try making your workbook as dynamic and flexible as possible by interlinking your cells and deriving your information. The second one being always be aware of the data type that is happening. The way text data types automatically align to the left, the value data types always automatically align to the right of the cell. So that signifies that it's a value data type. And the third is relative referencing. So let's learn something more about this referencing. This is something that we already saw. And when I drag down, they keep changing. What if my data was not in this format, but was in this format? That is, I have my liters over here and a rate in the fixed cell. If I again try using the same formula and try pasting it over here, you will see there are errors. And that is because of the third thumb rule of Excel. Because here in the cell G5, my formula is F5 multiplied by G3. But when I went down, This F5 changed to F6, but even my G3 changed to G4, which is not something that I wanted. Again, if you see here, my formula is moved from F7 to G5. I wanted my G3 cell to be fixed. In other words, I wanted an absolute reference instead of a relative reference. How do we do that? It is by adding dollar signs before the reference that you want to convert into an absolute. There's a shortcut to it, and that is F4. If you are using on your laptop, that will be F and F4. So now when I press enter and I drag this down with my fill handle, so if you notice that there's a small dot at the selected cell, and if you drag it here, the formula is dragged down. Now if you see, when my cell moved from G5 to G6, the F6 part of it changed from F5 to F6, but the G3 is still the same. Similarly here, and similarly in this case. So this is absolute referencing by using F4 or the dollar signs. The way there are relative references and absolute references, there's also a third type of reference, that's a mixed references in Excel. Very simple to understand if you understand the absolute reference. So when I wrote G3 here, you will notice that I wrote $G and $3. That means that my G part and the 3 part is fixed. When I use something like mixed references, that is when I fixed either a row or a column. How do I do that? I again press F4. So F4 is a toggle button. That is, if I press F4, I see a G $3. That is, my G is relative and 3 is absolute. Again, when I press F4, you will see my G is absolute, my 3 is relative. Again, you will see a completely relative reference, completely absolute, mix, relative. So now let's understand how this works. So when I drag my formula downwards in the G column, I want my G to be fixed. It is okay. I want my G to be fixed. Why is this system hanging? Just a second. All right. Yeah. So I want my column row 3 to be fixed. And G, as it is, I'm not worried because I'm not dragging this formula in the right direction. So let's see. Now when I write this formula, the F5 part as before is relative, the G part is relative, and the 3 part is fixed. Even if I drag this formula down, my results are still same. Because you see F6, G doesn't matter because I have not dragged my formula in the right direction. I'm just dragging it down. And my 3 is locked because I've used the dollar sign. You will understand this more when I do the same thing in this format. That is, I multiply my K5 by I6. I can use the absolute reference, but here my point is to show you how it works when I lock my I, because here I want to lock my I, and 6 I'm not concerned because I'm not dragging my formula down. So I'll paste this down. The other way of dragging your formula is by pressing Control R. That's a shortcut. So here also you have a shortcut Control D, but there are no shortcuts as Control U and Control L. That is, D stands for down, R stands for right. There are no shortcuts like U and L because by default Excel works from top to bottom and left to right. So as you see here, again my K5 part is relative because I'm going to move it around. My I part is absolute. My 6 part is again relative, and it doesn't matter because I'm not dragging my formula downwards the rows. So now let's try understanding here, and this will completely clear your concepts about relative and absolute references. So here I want to write a formula in the cell F3, and I want the formula in such a way that when I copy and paste it around, it shows me right answers in all the cells. So let's see what I'll do. First, let's just write the formula. But we know that copying it here around will create issues because right now all the references are relative. Let's see what I need to fix. Do I need my F column to be fixed? Not really, because I'm going to drag this column to drag this formula to the right, and I want my F12 part to change to G12, H12, I12, J12, etc. Do I want my 12 part to be fixed? That is this part. Yes. When I drag this formula down, I do not want my F12 to change to F13 or F14 or F15. So I'll lock my 12 part. Now coming to E13. Do I want my E part to be fixed? Yes, because when I drag this formula to the right, I do not want it to change to F13, F14, F15, etc. Do I want my 13 part to be locked? Not really, because when I drag this formula, I want it to change from 13 to 14, 15, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on. So I lock my E part. Now when I press Ctrl R and Ctrl D, you will notice I have correct formulas in all the areas. So again, looking at the formula, the F part is relative, the 12 part is absolute, the E part is relative, and the 13 part is absolute. So that was something about referencing. And this is an error that most people face when they are making reports and they copy paste formulas and this happen. So keep in mind the third thumb rule of Excel. By default, all the references are relative. If you need to make them absolute, you need to use the dollar signs. So that brings me to the next part. So before this part, I'll just explain a short concept here. What are Excel functions? So all of you might have seen something like this when you were working on your schools. Something like this. So this is f of x of y is equal to 2x plus 5y. So what is f of 3 comma 2? And so what we do here is when we used to solve this, we used to multiply 2 by 3 and 5 by 2, and the answer we get was 16. This is exactly how every function on Excel works. Every damn function on Excel works in a similar format. Every function in Excel, you need to understand 5 things about this function. First one is the name of the function. Very simple. The names like sum, countif, VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, index, match, all of these are the name of the functions. The second part is the calculation that the function performs. All right, I have a comment. Please go a little bit slow before we see the formula and digest. If you have moved on. All right, I'll go a little slow. So coming back to functions, 5 parts of a function. The first part is the name of the function. There's a sum, countif, and the VLOOKUP, all the names of the function. Second is the calculation that the function performs. This part is something that will be stored inside the name of the function in Excel. That is the calculation that the function will perform. The third part is the parameters or the questions that the functions ask us. In short, function हमें क्या पूछेगा? Those are the parameters of the function. The fourth part is the arguments, that is answers that we pass to the function. हम function को क्या answer देंगे? And finally, result that the function returns. So we have name of the function, calculation that function performs, questions that the function will ask us, answers that we will provide, and at the end, result that the function will throw. These are the 5 elements. If you start understanding this for every function in Excel, you can literally learn all the functions by yourself. These are the only 5 elements that exist inside all the functions in Excel. So let's go again back to our Excel files. So here I have a mark sheet of some students. I have their marks. I need to find the percentage. I'll again calculate the percentage here. C8 multiplied by D5. But again, we need to remember the third thumb rule of Excel, that is absolute referencing. Here, if I copy this formula and paste it down, you will notice that I get the wrong result. And that is because when my cell changed from D8 to D9, my formulas also changed from C8 to C9. That is fine because I want it to change. But even the D5 part changed from D5 to D6, which is not something I want to change. So I'll keep it absolute. So here, when I'll put my cursor to D5, click on F4. It doesn't matter if I use an absolute reference or a mixed reference until my 5 part is fixed. I'll use a completely absolute reference just to avoid confusions and press enter. So now I can either paste the formulas down, I can drag it, press Ctrl D, or there's another way of dragging the formula down is by double clicking this fill handle. This little dot that we see here, when I double click it, it will paste the formulas down till that area where I have data to the left of it. So I have all my formulas down. So this was the simple part to calculate the percentage. Oh, I need to divide it. Yes. So this was simple. I'll convert this entire part to a percentage format so that it is more presentable. So that was about it. I just wanted to revise the concept of referencing, but let's come back to functions. These are some of the simple functions, but here we'll understand how to read a function and how to understand the function that we are not aware about. So I need the total number of students in class. Some of you might know, some of you might not know. There's a count function where you give the entire range and press enter. But you see a 0 here. That is because we actually missed to read the calculation that the function performs. That's the second element of a function, the calculate. So let's just go step by step in understanding a function. So when I say the count function, the name of the function, the first element is obviously the count. Second, the calculation that the function performs. It is count of number of cells in a range that contain numbers. So the count function only counts the number of cells that contain numbers. So that is a mistake that we made. We actually applied to the name. But if we want to count the number of names in this list, we can use the count a function. What the count a function does is it counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So if I apply this function over here, it will give me the correct answer 3. But let's try understanding it more. Let's go to the count function. The count function counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. The third element, the question that the function asks us is the values or a range in which you need to count the number of cells that have numbers. So right now I will pass this as the value because this is the column that has numbers. So this is the argument or the answer that I have given to the cell. The question it asked me was the value or the range. The answer I gave it is C8 to C52. And when I press enter, the result that the function gives me is 45. So that is how this actually works. But before going to the next function, there's a small concept that I need to tell you all. That is named references in Excel or named ranges. So if I want to calculate all of these, the total marks scored by the entire class, the average marks, the highest marks, lowest marks, every time I'll have to give this range. But I want to save time doing that. So what I'll do is I'll select this entire range. And here I will write marks. What did this do? What did this change in Excel? Let's go to home tab. Let's go to formula tab and in the name manager. So the name manager are all the names that you have defined in Excel. So you see there's a name already created here saying marks. And if you see here, it refers to the range that I had selected. that is C8 to C52. So now whenever I write the word marks, it will automatically refer to my range of C8 to C52. Let's try using that in the count function. Count, bracket open. When I type M, you will see a prompt here with a tag kind of a symbol. That is how names are stored, and that is how Excel prompts you the name. I will write marks, I'll close bracket, and again I get the same answer, 45. So you can literally name your ranges in Excel so that you don't have to reference them again and again. Let's go to the next thing. Total marks scored by the entire class. So here the function is sum. What the function does is adds all the numbers in a range of cells. Again, very intuitive. The question that the function asks me is the range of cells. I'll again give marks, close bracket. So the question that the function asked me was the range. The answer that I gave was marks, that's the argument. And the result it will throw me is 5671. You can verify this by selecting the entire range and watching over at the bottom of the taskbar, where you see the count, the sum, as well as the average. The average can be calculated here in two ways. One is by dividing the total marks by the count of students, or there is an average function very similar to the count and the sum function. Again, the parameters, the range of the cells. I'll again write marks, close bracket. I have my average. So the last two functions from this example, again, very simple, are the max and the min function. The max function gives the maximum value from a range that you provide, and the min function gives the minimum value from the range you provide. So I'll again write max, marks, close bracket. I have 143. That is the maximum marks anyone would have scored in this list. And when I write min, it will give me the lowest marks that someone in this list has scored. So these were some of the very basic functions: the sum, count, average, max, and min. So here I wanted to show you how do you have an approach towards your Excel functions. And the secondly, the concept of named ranges. All right. So any questions that anyone has, you can now post to the chat box regarding these tools. Not any other questions regarding the something till here. Anyone has questions, or can I move ahead? Can you repeat how to name a range? Yes. So there are two ways to name a range. Let's say I want to range this particular name. That is all the names I have. I'll select the entire range. And here on the top left where there's a B8, B8 is nothing but the first selected cell of my selected range. I'll simply write names. There's another way. You can go to the formula bar, name manager, and you can add a new name. You'll write the name of the range, and here you will select the range and click OK. But an easier way is to select your range. Let's say I want to name this particular range of 3 cells. What I'll do is select the range and name it here in the top left corner. So now when I use my count A function on that particular named range, the answer will be 3, because there are 3 cells in this, 3 non-blank cells in this range. How do you select formula from a list after we type a little formula? Okay, I'll answer this one for how do you select the formula from the list after we type a little formula. The answer is by clicking tab. So let's say I have a long function name, say VLOOKUP. I'll try V, and then I press tab. That will enter the entire formula. Yes, I'll go to the function screen. All right. So this was the screen that I showed. 5 elements of a function, the name of the function, that is as we saw, the sum, count, average, etc. The calculation that the function performs, that is in count function was counting the number of cells that have numbers in them. In countif function, counting the non-blank cells. In the sum function, it is adding up the values in a range and so on. The parameters is the question that the function asks us. In the count function, it asks us, give me the range in which you need to count the number of cells. Or in sum function, give me the range from which you need to count the number of when you need to add the number in the cells, and so on. Arguments is the answer that we give to the cell, okay, give to the function. That is the ranges that we give. And result is the answer that the function throws at us. That is in our case 145 or 126.022. That was the average. So I'll go back to this. So I'll again, there's some confusion about the named ranges. When I go to the name manager, you will see there are 3 names that I've made. The marks is the range from C8 to C52. That is this particular range. The names is this particular range, and the function func, that the func is this particular range. So now when I'm entering a formula, let's say min, and it is asking for a range, and if I start typing a name that is stored inside Excel, it will start giving me prompts of all the names that you have already defined. I can press enter, close, and I'll get the min. So don't worry, as in when we go ahead and try other examples, things will get clearer in terms of functions and name ranges. So here I have a simple example. These are all the date functions that will be useful to you when working on Excel. So let's see how this function works. So day function returns the day, that is the date part from your entire date. So here I have my date written as 20th June 2020. If I use the day function, it gives me the 20 part of this. Very simple and straightforward function, equal to day, bracket open, give my reference as a date, close bracket, and you get the date. The next function that we'll see is the month function. Again, very intuitive, equal to month, bracket open, the serial number of the date, and it will give me the 6th part of my date. That's the June part of my date. The year function, again, only one parameter, only one question that the function asks me, give me the date from which you need the year, and I'll give C3 again. This will give me 2020. So these 3 are very intuitive functions. That's the day function, gives me the day part of it. Month function gives me the month part in the form of number, and the year part gives me the year of from that particular date. So the next function is weekday. Weekday function has 2 parameters, the serial number and the return type. But as you see, the return type is an optional parameter. I'll zoom in a bit. Whenever you'll see the list of parameters after the bracket open in the label here. Whenever a particular parameter is in a square bracket, it means that it is an optional parameter. you may or may not give the argument for that particular parameter. All right, but let's see what that does. I'll zoom out a bit. Yes, so this is my weekday function. I'll give my date, comma. So you will see that the parameter, this parameter is particularly expecting an answer in the form of 1 to 17, where number 1 means the first day. It will consider first day of my week as Sunday, and the 7th day of my week as Saturday. That is, it will start my week from Sunday. If I enter 2, the first day of my week will be Monday. Similarly, 3, it will give Monday as 0. So it will start my count from 0, and so on. Right now, I'll avoid using it and see what is my answer. So my answer is 7. And that means the 7th day of the week, which is a Saturday. So because today is a Saturday, we know this is Saturday. So I'll try using the parameters. So the first parameter, very clear, the date for which I need to know the weekday. If I enter a 1 year, it will start my count from Sunday 1, Monday 2, Wednesday 3, so on till Saturday 7. So if I close here, I get the answer 7 because this date is a Saturday. But if I give an answer 2, you'll get the answer 6 because when I enter 2 over here, it started counting my week from 1 Monday, 2 Tuesday, 3 Wednesday, and so on till 7 Sunday. So here my Saturday will be 6. So this all depends on the kind of report and kind of client that you are giving this report to, because certain companies consider Sunday as the first day of the week and certain companies consider Monday as the first day of the week. But anyways, by default, if I don't enter the particular parameter, by default it takes the value 1 and it will count Sunday as the first day and Saturday as the last day of the week. So that is why I get an answer 7 here. Now, most of you might want to ask a question saying that how do I get the name of the week instead of the number of the week to avoid all this calculation? We'll look at it, but let's first understand the last function from this section, that is EO month. EO month is a short form for end of month. So it asks for a start date. I'll again give this date, and it asks for number of months. Let me enter 0 here, and you will see what exactly happens. So again, the same error that we found, but now we know what this is. It is just a raw number represented in a different way. I'll convert this data type to date, and we have 30th June. So what this function did was, from a particular date, it gave me the last date of the month 0 months after this date. I'll again clarify it. 20th June 2020. What EO month does is, it returns the date. When Excel says serial number, it's generally date, because as I discussed, dates are nothing but raw numbers represented in a certain way. It returns the serial number of the last day of the month before or after a specified number of months. So it returns the last day of the month before or after a specified number of months. So here I'll again give my parameter as date, and the months will be 0. When I enter 0 here, it will give me the last date of that particular month, that is June. If I enter a 1 year, it will give me the last date of a month after the month from this date. So it will give me the last day of July. If I write a minus 1 year, it will give me the last date from the previous month. So similarly, you can get the last day. So this is useful when you have certain due dates. Let's say a due date is last day of the month after 3 months. So you can use this formula by writing 3 and your answer will be 30th September. That is the last day of the month, 3 months from this particular day. So that was year month. I'll again repeat these formulas. The day function gives me the day, that's the 20 part. The month function gives me my month number. The year function gives me my year. Weekday function gives me the weekday number based on the criteria that I've provided. And year month gives me last day of the month after or before a particular number of months. So let's come to the second part of this section. But before going there, there's one thing I want you to notice here, that whenever I entered and the result was shown, by default, everything was aligned to the right of the cell. And that means this function gives me a result in the form of a value data type and not a text data type. Here, this is another method of fetching this day, month, year, weekday, year, month from the date, but there's a small change. The function is text, a single function that does this all. There are two parameters, the value and the format in which you want to see the value. So in the value, I'll again give C3, that is my date. In the format, I'll write DD. So these are some stored formats in Excel, which you will need to memorize it, but they are very intuitive. DD means my date in two numbers. So you will see 20. Then why DD? DD is because if this was not 20th June and 5th June, it would have shown 05 instead of 5. But if this was D, it will show 5. Now, one important question, what will it show to a 20 June when I've written D? It will show 20 because showing 2 or 0 will be logically very incorrect. So D is not generally of a much use. I would always prefer using a DD so that a single number or a two number date is shown. So the function was text function. What is the value and in what format do you want to see the value? So let's go ahead with another example of the same text function. The value and the format in which I want to see the value. So this will again give me my month number. Now let's see what happens when I type a MMM. The value and the format in which I want to see the value. This will give me my month names in a short form that is in 3 characters. That is June, or when I have my date as, let's say, it will give me a Sep. If I want the full names of my date, I do not need to type the number of characters in the month name. I simply will type MMM. So again, the value, and this is my format in which I need my value. So I'll have September. But one thing about the text function that you will notice is that it by default gives me the result in a text format or a value or a label data type. I know that because this is by default aligned to the left of my cells. Coming again to YY format, very intuitive. When I use a YY, it will give me my last 2 digits from the year. That is, if I have a 1994 year, it will be 94. The YYY format gives me the entire year. That is the entire 1994. So this gives me my entire 1994. Now comes to the question that I avoided in beginning, that having the name of the weekday instead of the week number. That actually resolves a lot of confusion regarding how the weeks are being numbered in the weekday function. This will be DDD, and I get my weekday name in a short form that is a 3-character word. Let's enter today's date so that we know what weekday it is. So this is a Saturday, and similarly a DDDD will give me my weekday, the entire name of my weekday. So I get a Saturday. So that was about some of the date functions. When you use the functions like day, month, year, weekday, year, month, they give you a result in the number format or the value format. These ones, they give you the result in a text format. We know that because they are aligned to the left of the cell. So let's go ahead with a few more text functions. So for the first one we see here is the difference. How do we calculate difference between two dates? So let's say my birthday is on 1st June 1994 and today's date is 17th September 2020, and I want to find the difference. As I said earlier, dates are nothing but raw numbers stored in a particular raw numbers represented in a particular way. But as they are stored in Excel, they are nothing but some raw numbers where every date is represented as a number starting from 1st Jan 1900. So if they are numbers, can they be directly subtracted from each other? Yes, we can do that, and I get the number of days. So yeah, the number of days difference between today's date and the birthday is 9605 days. But not always you want the difference between two dates in the form of number of days. You might need it in the form of number of years or year, months or days, etc. How do we do that? So please pay attention here. This is something important, and this is something that you won't find in the formula section. There's a formula called as date diff. And even if you type the entire formula, you will see there are no prompts here. When I used to type sum, I used to get a prompt over here. When I used to type a VLOOKUP, I used to get a prompt. There's a function date diff. You will not see a prompt unless I type bracket open. Again, you won't find any parameters name, no information about this function. This is because this is a hierarchy function. Excel is derived from a software called Lotus 123 that was years back, and that particular software had this function. So Microsoft was not interested in giving this function to Excel, but since there are few files or some there's a hierarchy that has been followed, they had to insert this function. So you won't find any information about this function. I'll tell you the parameters. The first parameter is the start date. The second parameter is the end date. And the third parameter is the format in which you want this difference. Again, these formats are something you need to memorize. The first format is Y, which will give me my difference between this date in the form of years. So again, I'll repeat this function. The function name is date diff equal to date diff diff bracket open. The first parameter is the start date. Second parameter is the end date. And the third parameter is the format in which you need the difference between these two dates. So this function, because it's a hierarchy function, you won't even find the reference to this function in the list of the function that Excel has. But it does what it does. It calculates the difference in years. Now let's say I want to calculate the same difference in months. So again, my start date, my end date, and M, that is month. So there are 315 months between these two dates. Again, in date, that is in days, we can have this start date, end date, and D, that will be 9605. But now, what if I want my answer in the form of, let's say, 26 months, 3 months, 4 days, or something like that? Again, that can happen with the date diff function. That's date diff. The first two parameters remain the same. My start date, my end date, and now my last parameter will be ym. And let's see what result this gives me. This gives me a result 3. So I'll quickly write the parameters that I use here: y, m, d, ym. So what this signifies is the difference between these two dates is 26 years and 3 months. So when I use ym, it gives me the number of months beyond the number of complete years. So there are 26 complete years between these two dates, and there are 3 months beyond these 26 years. So, and the last thing is the month date. So I have date diff, my start date, my end date, and here I will write MD. So this will be 16 days beyond 3 completed months, or beyond 315 completed months between these two dates. So now I have my answer in the way I wanted. When I have my start date and end date, I have 26 years, 3 months, and 16 days. So this is how date diff function works. These are the 5 formats that you need to memorize while using the date diff function. Yes. So I have a question. Why don't we have a 26,3 year and only 3? The ym parameter gives you your value in the form of number of months after number of complete years, and not. So if you want in the form of 26 and 3, you can simply combine the formulas, that is date diff y and date diff ym. But that is exactly where I'm coming to next. How do I get the exact number of years between two dates? We have a function called year frac. Year frac gives me the difference between 2 days in exact years in the form of fraction. So I'll see how it happens. My start date, my end date. Let's as of now ignore the basis. I'll explain what it is. It's an optional parameter. But if I enter here, I get the answer 26.29. That is the difference between these two dates in the form of a fraction. So that is how this works. And the parameter that we ignored here, that is basis, is the way in which you need to count the fraction. So if you type a 0 here, it will by default consider all the months with 30 days and the year having a 360 days. If you have a 1 year, it will count the way it just did in our function, that is actual number of days in that month divided by actual number of days passed, and so on. You can go ahead with this, but this is something that barely you will use in your practical life. Most of the time you will use something like this, that is your difference between these two dates in number of years, that is exact number of years in fraction. So yes, these were the some of the date functions: day, month, year, weekday, year, month. Only one parameter required, the date. The text function, the parameters required are the value and the format in which you need. And these are some of the functions to calculate difference between two dates. One way is to simply subtract them, but this will always give you the answer in the form of number of days. These are date diff function, which is a hidden function, kind of a hidden function in Excel, and you won't find the description of the function, the parameters. But as I discussed, there are 3 parameters: the start date, the end date, and the format in which I want my calculation, that is in years, in months, in days, or in number of months beyond completed number of years, or number of days beyond completed number of months. And this is the year frac function, which gives me my exact difference between the two dates in the form of fractional years. So yes, these were some of the date functions, very useful when you're working with sales data or something like that, when you need to find the due date, or you might need to, you're auditing some stock data and you need to calculate the expiry of that particular product. These date functions are very useful. So let's go ahead with the logical functions. These are some of the functions. Now these is the complicated part of an Excel, which are the logical function. What does a logical function do? Let's try it with a very step-by-step process. I have a data here with the license, driving license number, date of registration, the number of offenses that the driver has conducted, and I need to calculate the status and the category. The status is, if someone has created less than 3 offenses, the status should be active. More than equal to 3, more than 3 offenses, he should be suspended. And so on the category, less than 10 years, the driver will be novice, and more than 10 years will be experienced. So let's see, how do I calculate that? Before understanding that, we'll understand one particular data type in Excel, that's the Boolean category. That gives only, there are only two values in the Boolean category, true or false. If I ever type a condition in a cell, let's say my condition is number of offense, that is C4, is less than 3. When I enter something like this, Excel gives me the result in the form of true or false. Let's drag it down and you see this is false, this is false, and this is true. That is because the condition I entered was, is C4 less than 3? Excel gave me the answer false. Is C5 less than 3? Excel gave me the answer again false. Is C3 less than 2? Yes. That is, it gave me the answer true. So this is how Excel evaluates logical expressions. But what I want here is not true or false. I want active and suspended written. How do I do that? We use the if function. If function is perhaps the most useful function in Excel when you want to when you want your workbook to make decisions for you. So let's go ahead and see the calculation that the if function does. So now the elements of the function name is if. The calculation that the function performs is checks whether a condition is met, returns one value if true, and another value if false. There are 3 parameters: the logical test, value if true, value if false. The logical test is nothing but the same expression that we wrote previously when Excel was giving us the answer true or false. So what I'll do is, I'll again write my condition here, C4 less than 3. Value if true. So if the answer to C4 less than 3 is true, what do I want to display in this cell? I will write active. Value if false. What is the value do I want to display if this particular expression gives me the answer false? So my answer will be suspended. Bracket close, enter. My answer is suspended. Because suspended is a text, it by default aligned to the left of the cell. So what did this function do? this function evaluated this particular expression. If the answer was true, it would have given active. If the answer was false, it would have given a suspended. I'll click enter. I'll drag this down and you will see I get all my results. I double click on the fill handle and all the results are fulfilled. So this is the if function, 3 parameters, the expression to evaluate, value if true, value if false. The better way of doing this would be giving cell references for active, that is H5. But as I don't want to drag it down, I'll give an absolute reference, shortcut F4, comma, comma, H6, again this, absolute referencing, and I'll drag my formula down. Now, if at all my active changes to some other word, let's say online, just an example, all my active here will change to online. So that is how an if function works. If this criteria is true, give the result H5 or give the result H6. I'll change this to active again. Now here what I want is, I want to calculate the number of years that the person has been driving from the date of registration. And then I want the drivers to be categorized into novice and experience. How do I do it? So one way to count the number of years will be the difference that we have, the difference between today's date and the date of registration. It gives me a number, but again, we know this is just a raw number represented as a date. This is 79497, which is of no use to me because I want the answer in number of years. This is where you use your function date diff or year fraction. Here I will need the number of complete years, so I'll use date diff. My start date will be my date of registration. My end date will be today's date, but again, to make it dynamic, I'll use the today function. Today function is nothing but today, bracket open, bracket close, today and now. These are the two functions in Excel that don't require any parameter, because Excel does not need to ask you any questions to give you today's date or give you now, that is, it gives the current time. All right, so the only two functions in Excel that don't require any parameter, today function and now function. So coming back to date diff, my start date is my B4, my end date is today, and I want this in the form of complete years. So let's see if I get the correct answer. So 1998 to let's say 20 is yes, 21 completed years, but I don't want to count the number of years. I want to categorize it. So what I'll do is I'll write this an expression. Is this entire formula giving me an answer that is less than 10? So I've written an expression here. Date diff will give me the number of years, completed years between date of registration and today's date. If it is less than 10, true. If it is less than not less than 10, false. So you see 2011, 2020, 9 or 10 complete years. This will be 9 complete years. So it will give me the answer 2, true. In fact, if I drag it down, if you see in 2014, the answer is true, because from the difference between today's date and the date of registration is not completed 10 years. But again, I do not want true or false. I want novice or experience. That is where I'll use my if function. So just notice how I use it. If bracket open, this is my entire logical test. That is date diff before today y less than equal to 10, comma, value if true will be novice. Again, an absolute reference because I don't want it to change when I copy or drag the formulas down. Value if false, experienced. I'll close the bracket and I'll double click here. So there is some issue we get. Let's see what the issue is. So the issue is I missed doing an absolute reference on H11 cell, and that is why when it went down, it kept moving down, and there's nothing written here, so it gave me a 0. So I'll do H11 as an absolute reference, and then I'll double click on my fill handle and I get my categories. So any function by itself may not be of that much use, but if nested inside another functions, the way we have nested date diff and today inside if, you can do wonders with your Excel workbook. Some things that I wanted to tell here: expression can not only be equal to, less than or greater than, they can also be something like greater than equal to, let's say equal to this, less than equal to 3. This will also give me the correct answer. Is 3 less than equal to 3? Yes. Is 5 less than equal to 3? False. So you can write your conditions in the form of less than, greater than, equal to, less than equal to, or greater than equal to. Let's see what happens when I write equal to. Is C4 equal to 3? True. For any numbers other than 3, you will see a false. So there are multiple ways in which you can have the condition. Let's come back to our formula. So this formula does is, first it counts the difference between the registration date and today in the form of completed years. It evaluates whether those completed years are less than 10 or not. If yes, it gives whatever is written in H10 cell, that is no wise in our case, and H11 if it is not less than 10, and gives us H11, that is experience in our case. So that is how if functions works. Some arguments are written in inverted commas. If that is again the second thumb rule of Excel, the data type awareness. If the argument that the function requires is a text, you need to write them inside inverted commas. If they are numbers, formulas, or expressions, they will be written outside inverted commas. That is no inverted commas required. So here, the y parameter was a text. Y is not a value, and that is why it has to be written in inverted commas. Similarly, the that we had was a text or a label. It was not a value. It's not a number. It's not a raw number. So that is why it has to be written inside inverted commas. If the argument is a number, we write it in a, if we don't need to put inverted commas. All right. So this was one of the logic functions. And if the other logic functions that we are going to learn in this session are and or. Let's see what and does. So here I want to categorize few of my customers in the form of category 1, 2, and 3. Let's begin with category 1. My category 1 is all the customers who are regular and whose bill amount is greater than 7,000. Mind you, when I say and, it means that both of these conditions need to be satisfied. So let's see how do we go about it. One way people do it is, if this is equal to regular. So you might notice when I wrote regular, I put it inside inverted commas because it's a text. Value if true. They again write a if and see if the current bill amount is greater than 7,000. So you see 7,000, I did not put a inverted commas because it's a number, and so on. but this is not the correct way, or maybe this is not an efficient way to do that. How I would prefer is using the AND function equal to AND. So let's see what this function does. It checks whether all arguments are true and returns true if all arguments are true. Quite confusing, but you'll understand it when I use this in an example. Bracket open. All the parameters that AND requires are the expressions. When they say logical, is the expressions that we used in our previous example. So my first expression here is if my B5 is regular, and my second expression is if my bill amount is greater than 7,000. If both of these conditions are true, only in that case my AND function will give a true answer. So in this particular, you see my customer is regular and the bill amount is greater than 7,000. So when I drag this formula down, you will see a true here, because again, both my conditions are met, a regular and 12,630, that is greater than 7,000. You will see a false here because the customer is gold. Even though current bill is 7,000, my customer is not regular. So for AND function to give me a true, both of my conditions need to give an answer true. And one more thing, the number of expressions that AND can evaluate is not limited to 2. You can keep adding another logic. Let's say I want to add a logic where my monthly purchase is greater than 90,000. So in this case, my AND will evaluate 3 expressions. Is B5 regular? Yes. Is D5 greater than 7,000? Yes. Is C5 greater than 90,000? Yes. And so on. So when I drag it down, you will see a false over here. In fact, let's see, you will see a false over here. That is because even though my customer is regular, my current bill is greater than 10,000, my monthly purchase is not 90,000. So AND can evaluate as many expressions as you want. In our case, to categorize into category 1, we need only 2 expressions. If it's a regular customer and if the current bill amount is greater than 7,000. So let's go ahead. Here again, I don't want true or false. Let's say I want category 1 written in front of all those customers who fall into category 1. Again, I can do is this AND function is my entire expression. I'll write a if here, bracket open. It will evaluate this entire thing, give me a result in the form of true or false. And what the if function will do it is value if true. Let's say I want to write category 1, inverted commas because category 1 is a text, comma, value if false, I'll keep it blank. So that is 2 inverted commas without any space. So as you see, I have category 1 written in front of all the customers who fall into category 1, that is who follow my conditions of being regular and D5 greater than 7,000. So let's go ahead and see the OR function. The way AND function evaluates multiple expressions and gives me a true only when all the expressions are true. OR function will evaluate multiple expressions and give me a true if either of my expressions are true. Let's see this in example. Examples are much more clearer than mere sentences. So I have my OR function. The parameters are exactly the same as my AND function. That is all the expressions that I want to evaluate. Here my category 2 will be if the person is gold or the bill amount is greater than 10,000. So I'll write or my category equal to gold. My second expression is if bill amount is greater than 10,000. So again, when I double click on the fill handle, you'll notice we have a false here because neither the customer is a gold nor the current bill amount is greater than 10,000. You will see here you have a true because even though my customer is regular, my current bill amount is greater than 10,000. So this is the difference between the and the or function. And gives me a true when all of my expressions are met, or gives me a true when either of my expressions or either of my conditions are met. So now, again, as we did in the previous, in the category 1, I do not want true or false. I want category 2 written. So I'll write if bracket open, if bracket open. I already have my logical test written. Value if true will be category 2 and value if false will be blank. So now I have category 2 written in all the cells where my either of my conditions gold or bill amount greater than 10,000 is met. So again, let's see what this function does. If this expression gives me the value true, write category 2 or leave the cell blank. So now let's see a last example in the logical functions that is a combination of these two categories, these two functions and an or. So to categorize a customer in category 3, I have the following expression. The person should be gold and the purchase amount should be greater than 10,000 or bill amount should be greater than 12,500. So gold is a mandatory expression and either of these two, purchase amount greater than 10,000. I guess there's a mistake there. I need it to be 10,000 and bill amount greater than 12.5K. So let's see how it works. Equal to, first let's just verify the or criteria. Or purchase amount greater than 10,000, current bill amount greater than 12,500. So this gives me the answer in the form of true or false. All of them are true because either my purchase amount is greater than, oh, actually this was 1 lakh. My bad. There was no mistake in this case. So I need to write 1 lakh over here and double click on my fill handle. So we'll give the or expression is evaluated. Now I'll write the and function outside the or function. So before that, let's understand one thing. And function not only evaluates expressions, but it also evaluates the direct results of booleans. So when I pass my parameter as true and true, it gave me an answer true. When I pass my as false, it gives me the answer false. So the and function evaluates not only expressions, but also the Boolean values. That is, if I keep passing the expression true, 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 and close bracket, the AND function will still work. The one reason, very important reason is I haven't put true inside inverted commas. That means I have passed my argument in the form of a value and not a text. Had I placed this in inverted commas, this will show me an error because true cannot be passed as a text function. You need to pass true as a boolean. So now let's see how we go about this. Or monthly purchase greater than 1 lakh, current bill amount greater than 12,500. I have a false here. And so now I'll evaluate my second condition. That's a mandatory condition to be false, to be true, and that is gold. So I'll write and outside or. My first condition will be if my B5 is equal to gold, and then I have my second condition written in the form of or. Let's see what this exactly does. So here my AND function evaluates two expressions. This is the simpler one, P5 is gold, and then it evaluates this entire OR function. And if both of these expressions are true, it gives me the AND gives me answer true, or it gives me a false. Let's see again. So how this happens in the steps is, first the OR function is evaluated and a true or false value is given from this OR function. Then this particular true or false is evaluated with this expression. If both of them give the value true, my answer will be true. So let's see. Here I would like to explain you another feature of Excel. If someone sends you a file which has such complex formulas, how do you try understanding those formulas? So let's go to the formula tab, and there's a evaluate formula option over here in the formula auditing. So now I have the entire formula written here. I'll see if I can zoom it. Okay, this comes off for the same size, irrespective of the fact if I zoom it or not. So anyways, evaluate formula. There's a huge long formula written here. If I click evaluate, it will give me, it will see how this formula actually calculates the result step by step. So the first thing it did was to convert this particular thing into regular. Again, evaluate, it gave the answer false. Evaluate, it started evaluating the OR function. So on, false, false. So my OR function has false, false. Both the expressions are false, and AND. So when there's a long formula that you have, you can use the evaluate function and keep clicking evaluate to see how step by step this function is giving the result that it is displaying. So in our case, again, OR function evaluates these two functions and gives a result in the form of true or false. That true or false is evaluated with B5 equal to gold. And if both of these are true, it will give an answer true because those expressions are written inside the end function. So yes, I guess this file will be shared with you and you can try this on your end. That is how you will gain more clarity about these functions. But again, I'll end this by writing if function. The entire logical test is this long thing, comma, category 3, comma, blank. So now double clicking on the fill handle, I have my customers categorized. So let's go ahead. This was the logical functions. These are three major logical functions that you'll use generally: if, and, or. There are other functions too, which I'm not going to cover in this session. Those are XOR, true, false, but those are not something that you'll be using on a regular basis. These are the three functions that you'll be required most in your practical work. So let's go ahead. Okay, there's a complaint for the audio. Charmi, can you please confirm if the audio is proper?
Part audio was absolutely proper, not a problem.
All right, no problem.
Yeah, it's
So,
good.
all right. So I'll go ahead. So a lot of functions up till now. We got to know the basic sum count functions. We saw the date functions, the logical ones, and nested logical ones, that is an and or written inside if. Now let's go ahead with a simple feature of Excel, that is data validation. What is data validation? It is a locking that you keep on your Excel cells that restricts a user from entering some unwanted data. Let's say I have a small sales table which I have given to some subordinate or someone who needs to keep feeding entries: the date, the product name, the quantity, the price, and the amount. The amount will be nothing but quantity multiplied by price. So how do I make it in a such a way that there is no wrong entry done by the person who is making these entries? So that can be done by data validation. You will find this in data tab, data validation. So for now, I'll pin my ribbon to the taskbar. So I want that person to be able to enter only dates here, and that too only for the year, financial year of 2020, that is 1st April 20 to 31st March 21. How do I do that? So I click on the home tab, data validation. By default, all the cells are set to any value. That is, you can enter anything in any of the cells in Excel. So I'll restrict this by using date between. My start date will be and 31st March 2020. Okay. Sorry, 21, because my end date needs to be greater than the start date. So now, if someone tries entering a value, let's say 20, it will not let the person allow. It will give an error. Or if someone tries to enter a date outside my given criteria, that is, let's say by mistake someone tries entering 1st April to 2000 instead of 2020, again there'll be an error. So that is the first data validation that we saw, a date. So as you might have seen in the data validation option, there were many other options. Now let's go to quantity. I want my person to enter only whole numbers in the quantity. So again, data validation, whole number, let's say between 0 and the quantity. I don't know the maximum quantity, so I can write an exorbitantly high amount so that someone can enter only quantity over here and not enter text or decimal numbers. So let's say I do not really want to restrict the person from writing a decimal number, but I want to give them a warning. So data validation, as we see here, we have written our criteria that person needs to enter whole number. Dates is the whole number between 0 and an exorbitantly high number. The second part is the alert part. The input message is something that will pop up when the person clicks on the cell. But the more important part I want to show here is the alert part. There are 3 types of alert that you can display when a person enters a value that does not fall inside your categories. The first thing is stop, that we saw here. The stop feature will not allow the person to enter the value, that is, as we saw 24 point, let's say 56. This will not allow me to enter it. The second one is warning. What the warning will do is it will give a warning to the person entering, but eventually allow him to enter the values he's entering. So let's say I have put a criteria of whole number here. If I try entering 45 by 58, it will give a warning saying this value doesn't match the data validation restriction defined for this cell. Continue. If I say yes, it will let me allow this by overriding the data validation. So the first option was stop. That will completely deny the person from entering something beyond the data validation rules. Warning, which will give a warning, but eventually if you say yes, it will allow. And the last one is information, which is kind of same as the warning, but it doesn't have the option no. It will just give you the information saying this value doesn't match the data validation restriction for this cell. So the difference between warning and information is warning gives you an option to go back. Let's say if I say no, it will give me another option to type. But information just gives the information to the user that this is not as per the data validation rules, but it goes ahead nevertheless the rules. But mostly, if you want to restrict your users from entering something beyond, then you generally use the stop option that will stop the person from entering something beyond your rules. So the data validation option has whole number, decimal number, date, time, and text length. We'll see the list and the custom later on. Let's see for the easier ones. The text length. The text length is nothing but the number of characters that the person can include. This is specially used for the mobile numbers when we use it. If you want someone to enter the mobile number, you can keep this equal to 10 so that the person will not able to enter something less than 10. So that is how you use the uh, text length thing. So whole number, decimal number is again something between, not between, equal to, not equal to. You can play around it and you will realize how these all functions work, but they are very intuitive by the name itself. Less than is a decimal number greater than or equal to or less than. So we have a whole number, decimal number, date, time, text length. Now the two parts that are remaining are the most complicated ones, the list and the custom. Let's see what the list does. So when I enter a list, it asks me for a source. So here I want my products to be, I don't want the person entering this product name to create some spelling mistakes. That will create a lot of problem when I'm using this data as, let's say, for a pivot table, for a COUNTIF, or for something. So what I'll do is data validation, list, and for the source, I'll click on the when I want to enter the source, I can write the range of the cells where my list present, or I can simply click here and select my source. So now my source has been selected as absolute reference G5 to G10. And when I click OK, when the person enters a date here, and when he goes to the product field, there'll be a drop down with the list of names. So I can have this, I can have my quantity again. There's some data validation that I've put. So there's a text length. I'll again change it to whole number, between, or let's say greater than 0, my whole number. So the person can enter a whole number. Again, there'll be a price and there'll be my amount calculated with a formula as per the first thumb rule of Excel. Always derive rather than manually entering it. And that's 1296. So this is the part of data validation. So this is the list part where I can give my source as a list so that the person will only see the options from this particular list. So this was and the last part of the data validation is the custom. When I clicked on the custom, you will see that instead of source, I have formula written here. So what will this do? In the formula bar, you need to write a expression and the kind of expression which gives the answer in the form of true or false. If that expression gives the answer true, the data validation function will allow the user to enter that data. And if it gives a false, it will disallow. Let's see how it happens. I have my number over here. I have my cell over here, and I want the person to enter a number divisible by 2. Okay. How do I first write a function that evaluates a true or false value based on the divisibility of 2? So there is a mod function. Mod is nothing but the remainder that we have. So let's say I have a number 54. If I write mod, 54 is the number, divisor is 2. My mod will be 0 because 52 when divided by 0 gives a remainder 0. When divided by 2 gives a number 0. If this is 55, my mod will be 1. So let's say I have 3 here. My mod will be 1. Let's say 56, mod will be 2. So mod is nothing but a remainder that we get after dividing a number by a divisor. So to evaluate if this number is divisible by 2, I'll write mod 56 comma 2 equal to 0. This gives me answer true. If there's a 57, gives me an answer false. If there's answer 59, gives you an answer false. So now I have an expression that evaluates whether a number is divisible by 2 or not. What I'll do is I'll copy this entire formula, and now in the data validation part, in the custom part, I will paste this formula and click OK. I'll delete this. So now when I enter an odd number, it does not allow me, it gives a restriction. If I allow even number, it gives me 34. Let's try another formula to see how this works. Let's say in this particular cell, I do not want someone to write a date that is a Sunday. I do not want a date. If someone tries to enter a date that is a Sunday, the Excel sheet should not allow. How do I do? First, let's write a expression that evaluates if it's Sunday. As we know, I'll use the text function here. I can also use a weekday, but that again creates all the confusion about weekdays, the counting of the weekdays. So I'll have my this and DDD. So this gives me the answer wed. I'll evaluate this if equal to Sunday. So this gives me answer false, but this is not how I want to do it. I want to write an expression that gives me a true if it is not a Sunday and false if it's a Sunday. So instead of equal to, I will write not equal to. How do you write not equal to? Less than, greater than sign. So when you write this sign, it means not equal to. So now, because this date is a Wednesday, it will give me a true. Let's write today's date so that it is more clear. So this is true. If I write tomorrow's date, this will give me a false. So once I have an expression that gives me a true or false based on my condition, I simply copy this expression, select this cells where I need the data validation, data validation. Instead of date, I write a custom, that's a formula. I'll paste my formula, click OK. Now, when someone tries entering a date, that is a Sunday, it will not allow. So that is a way how you use the custom part. You write a formula or an expression that gives you the result true or false. If the result is true, it will take in the entry. If the result is false, it will not take in the entry. So now if I write a 20 today's date, it will allow me because it's a Saturday. So that was about the data validation part. So Charmi, that's already 12:59 that I see. Do I continue with the last example or I leave it for tomorrow?
How long will that take, Parth?
Something around 10 to 12 minutes, not more than that.
So actually we have like 13 questions and a few raise of hands
Exactly.
already. So let's keep this for tomorrow and let's resolve the queries right now.
No problem. No problem. So yeah, let's go ahead with the queries. So you will be
So
reading them or I
yeah,
should be
I'll
going ahead?
I'll read them for you.
All right.
So there's this one question. Many times there's a small green area in the left corner of a number cell, and we have we have to perform ignore error. Can you please help to avoid this error and how to rectify it together in number of cells?
All right. So the best way is to actually ignore the error, but I'll tell you how this error comes up. Let's see. Let's say I have few numbers here and I have few numbers here, and I write a formula. Say this. I drag it down, and then suddenly here I write a completely different formula saying sum. So in my system, I have by default ignored all the error. But if you do something like this, you will get a small green dot that you get over here. Is that what you're talking about, right? The small green triangle that you get at the top edge. And then there's a I button here and you need to ignore the error. Those are simple errors. Excel feels that you have done something wrong by not following the consistency of the formula. All these formulas were multiplying B2 by C2, B3 by C3, B4 by C4, and suddenly there's a formula that is doing something different. Excel tries to give you an alert that is this what exactly you wanted to do, or is there an error? So that is nothing but a warning system that your formulas are not consistent and you to ignore the error. Another error that you might see is when you write something like this, but you wanted it to be 000345 and you write it in the text format. So again, as you see in my thing, my system, I've completely switched off that error part. But again, when a text is stored as a number or a number is stored as a text or a date is stored as a text, Excel give you such errors saying that, are you sure you want to save this as 000345 and not 345? So that is when you decide as per your preferences if you want to ignore that particular error or you want to go ahead. I'll try enabling their error part. I don't remember how it is. So yeah, you see the error checking rules. So I have unticked this inconsistent calculated column formula in table. Let's say I do that and I drag this down and suddenly I use a completely different formula that is inconsistent. You will not see the error. I've completely disabled all the pop-ups from my system. But yeah, those are the errors are for inconsistent formula or for inconsistent data type. So when a text is stored in the form of number or a date is stored in the form of text, you might see those errors, and based on your preferences, you can ignore them or correct them.
Okay. Part there is another question. At the rate and equal to, are they same? Or like at the rate sum or equal to sum, the functions that we
uh,
use?
no, they are not the same. So let's say I have a couple of names here. Ignore my spelling mistakes. And I have my so this generally at the red part is people when they see a table, data table, and then here when I write a formula, let's say sum of these, that is when you see an at the rate. So at the rate means nothing but this particular row in sales column. So you generally see at the rate when you're using formulas inside a data table. So then when you are working inside a data table, the ranges are dynamic and not fixed. So now I don't need to write a C4 multiplied by, let's say, 10. I'll write at the rate sales multiplied by 10. In my system, the flash fill is completely off, but you, when you do it on your system, you'll notice the entire columns get filled because the formula is at the rate sales multiplied by 10, and at the rate means that particular row in the sales column. So it will multiply anything that is in that particular row in which the formula is from the sales column and multiplied by 10. So at the rate stands for, just remember, at the rate stands for that particular row in the sales column. So at the rate and equal to are not the same. Equal to are used for writing the formulas, but at the rate are generally used inside the data tables. So no, you don't write an at the rate when you want to write a formula.
Okay. There is another question. Some arguments are written in inverted commas. So how do we know whether inverted commas are to be used?
Yeah, I cleared it back then that if the argument is expected in a text format, let's say in our date functions, the y we entered, the dd, the the yyyy, those were text. So you need to enter the text inside the inverted commas. But when you enter a number or a value data type as an argument, you enter it without an inverted commas. And the best example is while we were working with the if and function. Whenever I wanted to write a regular or a gold, I use inverted commas because regular and gold are the label data types or the text data types that I described in the second thumb rule of Excel. But 7,000, I did not write inside a inverted commas because it's a value and not a text. Again, category 1 was written inside text because inside inverted commas because it's a text data type. So whenever your argument is a text, you write it inside a inverted commas. Whenever it is a value or a number, you don't need to use, in fact, if you use inverted commas, it will throw an error.
Okay. Can we allow the decimal to get converted into whole number in data validation?
Decimal to get converted into then they get the question, or actually I got the question. So if someone enters 54.33, you want it to get converted to 54.
Yeah, that's what the question seems like.
So data validation will not do that. A better way of doing that will be you insert a column and you use the round function and let the person enter anything in the quantity. You by default round it. So let's say you will round it to 0 digits, 0 decimals. And you can have a calculated column in that sense rather, but data validation will not convert your decimals into round function. It only validates your entry and either allows you or denies you as per your preferences. Just one more thing here. when you use this feature, the rounding off feature, let's say I have a number here, 54.34. When I use this feature, it only displays my number as a rounded number, but does not really change my number. So when I add 1 to this, and when I open up the decimals, my decimals are still existing. So this again displays the number as 54, but does not change the number internally. To change the number internally, I need to use the round or the round up or the round down function. So round function is the number and the number of decimals I want to display, and I'll say 0. So it's 54.00. So now if I add 1 to this, no matter how much decimals I try to show, it will still be 55 and not 54.34. So yes, again, coming back to the query, data validation will not change your decimal to whole numbers. The one way is to have an additional calculated column which rounds up your decimal numbers.
Okay, so there's this one last question that we'll take up. How do you do data validation for PAN?
Data validation for PAN. So I think I'll need your help in this. So PAN is like what, 10 digits?
Yeah. So the first 4 digits will be alphabets, and
Correct.
the
Okay, got it.
yeah.
So there'll be a long formula that you'll need to write. Let's say using the sum of the text functions, that is left, right. Actually, I was planning to do the text functions today, but because of the time thing, I missed it. I skipped it. So there'll be a long formula that you need to write that evaluates the entire expression to be true or false. You can easily Google it out. If you Google out, a PAN validation formula, you'll simply get a formula, copy paste that formula in the data validation, and the PAN will be validated. But a simple way of validation will be if you can keep just a text length of 10, but that will again create, that is not a complete way of PAN validation. If you need to validate every character, there's a very long formula that you need to write. You can easily Google it out and you'll get the formula.